Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to our Monday, March 6th school board meeting. We will start with our agenda approval, deletions, additions. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you, Mrs. Suze. You do have an agenda at your workstation with some revisions. They are Roman numeral 7C1. We are tabling that item till 3:20. Roman numeral 7D1. There are revised items at your workstation, and 7D2 also revised items at your workstation.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a sorry.
We have a motion by Dr. Malco and a second
Fine, yep, whoever.
by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Is there any correspondence this evening, Ms. Kelly?
There is not.
All right, we'll move into our liaison committee updates. Mr. Marshall.
Yes, I can indicate that we do have a specific set of interviews occurring tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We will be interviewing for replacement, if you can call that a replacement, of our curriculum director for secondary.
Do you know how many are being interviewed?
I've been told there are 8 candidates. We'll have 5 on Tuesday and 3 on Wednesday. Right, Terry?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if we went to 4. I think we had to go to 4 on. We went to 4 on Wednesday. We added one more.
Oh, so there'd be 9.
9 altogether.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Can you tell me who's on the committee? I'm not names, but like teachers, parents, board members, or?
Microphone.
It's a central office position, so it's more central office people along with the building.
Same age school board is the liaison.
So be the secretary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kelly?
Yes, I don't have anything this evening. My boards meet this week, so I will have something next time.
Thank you. Dr. Medlin?
The Wellness Committee is meeting, and they put together the Canvas page that teachers can access, but they're also trying to put together some Couch to 5K, I guess you would call it initiatives at a couple of the schools, so it's good stuff.
Dr. Malco?
Yes. Lake Central Education Foundation, the grants went out, and I believe that they will be presented at a school board meeting to the recipients on March 20th. Does that sound right?
I have not received anything from them
Okay.
yet, but once I do, I put it on the agenda.
Right.
Okay.
It's 2 weeks away, but I do believe that that will happen on March 20th. So we look forward to that because that's always a lot of fun to rah-rah the teachers that take the extra time to submit the grants. Dyer Parks Department is continuing to move forward with their Grand Central Park, which is on Calumet. And it's just a process, as you know, so I'll keep you updated on that. And that's it.
Thank you. And all I have is for Dollars for Scholars. I believe we have 83 seniors that submitted applications. So that's better than what we did last year. So thank you. Our official school board business topics consent agenda. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you again, Mrs. Suze. Seek board approval for the minutes from our work session on February 20th, as well as our regular board meeting on February 20th. Also seek board approval for the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures you received last week.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Marshall.
Second.
I'll second that.
Second by Dr. Malco. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We have no public comments regarding action items, so we'll move right into our official school board business topics, regular agenda. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you. My first item is to seek board approval for the 6 policies that we reviewed and in some cases discussed at our work session last time. Those are Roman numeral 7, A, 1, A through F. Seek board approval.
Move to approve those school board policies.
Motion by Dr. Medlin and a second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. My second item, very quickly, just want to remind the community that we are having a Lake Central Finance 101 a week from tomorrow. For the board's information, I will be sending out a second notice about this tomorrow evening. That'll be 1 week before the event, and I'll probably do a short final reminder on the Sunday before that meeting. So we're hoping some people come out who are curious about the way we conduct business.
So Larry, we had talked about little hand cards, or little message cards to pass out to people as we see them. Are those going to materialize?
Not by the next Tuesday, no.
Okay.
My final item is to do a legislative update for the board. These are some of the items that we're following closely. The first item is still HB 1001, the budget bill. The current proposal that's been sent over to the Senate, the second half of the session beginning today, proposed an 8.5% increase for K-12 for 2024. Unfortunately, the current formula shows less than half of that going to tuition support. $160 million of it is being dedicated to free textbooks, $33 million to English language learners, $240 million for voucher expansion, a 70% increase over the current budget allocation for use of public funds to attend private school. And that's a big chunk. So we'll see how the Senate manipulates that and works with that. Lake Central will continue to follow this, and we will run some simulations after we see how the Senate modifies this plan. Right, Mr. James?
That is correct, Dr. Fry.
Okay, thank you. Second piece I want to go over again is HB 1499. This is the property tax relief. This is something that it appears has some legs. It's been passed over to the Senate. It is a 2-year plan, as I mentioned at our last meeting. The 1% for residential property tax drops to 0.95 in 2024, goes back to 0.975 in 2025, and then returns to 1% in 2026. There's also an increased homestead deduction included in the legislation. HB 1412 was also rolled into this bill. The key component of that is language regarding the ability for property owners to seek an assessment appeal, the details of that, which are at this point still rather vague. This legislation would also cap Operation Referendum increases in 2024 to 3% over the pay 2020-23 rate. It also includes some guidelines where districts above certain school tax rates must use the referendum process to increase taxes even for smaller projects that would not impact Lake Central at this time. One other item I want to quickly talk about is HB 1428, Partisan School Board. Again, this session, the legislation did not move forward, but a different bill from the Senate, Senate Bill 177, did pass over to the House, and this one requires school board members seeking inclusion on a ballot to follow the same timeline as other local elected officials. So they'll change the timeline for you, but they're not going to make you declare a party. And then finally, Senate Bill 12, material harmful to minors. This one is worth keeping an eye on. It establishes a procedure for a parent or guardian to file a complaint about an inappropriate book. I'm not sure how consequential that piece is. We already have systems in place to hear parental concerns about materials, and so that one isn't that shocking. But there are some details lacking regarding a complaint review committee that they vaguely talk about. And so we do worry about other rumors from other pieces of legislation where librarians can be held legally responsible for materials that someone finds harmful, and there really aren't very good guidelines on what that means. And so we will continue to watch whatever that piece of legislation turns into on the House side regarding books that are in libraries, books that are in individual teacher classrooms that can be selected for reading, and how it's going to impact our public libraries as well. So we'll continue to follow whatever Senate Bill 12 turns into. Any questions about any of that at this time?
I have a comment. I'd like to add a comment on the SB 12 legislation pending. It's premature for me to voice either pro or con, but I think that entire bill is on very shaky grounds until we find out what some of the particulars are. It causes, in my mind, concern how it's handled. So it's something I agree with you wholeheartedly. We have to keep an eye on it.
Well, it's one of those pieces where either permit us to have local control or tell us what those pieces are that you want removed, right? I mean, it's like we don't want to tell you what to do, but we don't want you to really have local control either. So we just need more guidance. So you're right, Howard. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that somehow related, or is it somehow supported by the Moms for Liberty? Do you know?
I don't know that.
I don't know because I don't pay attention to them.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to our Director of Human Resources Personnel, Mrs. Mucha.
Thank you very much. We are recommending that the following items be approved, but I want to bring your attention to Diane Hanley with 29 years of service to our Grimmer Guidance Department. That's quite a lot of years.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mrs. Kelly, and I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Our Director of Primary Education, Dr. Bracy.
Good evening. I'm seeking approval for the professional leave request provided in your packets.
Move to approve the professional leave requests.
Motion by Dr. Medlin,
Second?
second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And this is the second time I've been able to say this. I'm also seeking approval for the field trip request you have in your packets. I'm so excited.
Motion to approve those field trip requests.
Motion by Mrs. Kelly,
I'll second that.
second by Dr. Malco. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
If Mrs. Cruz needs anybody to go to Lincoln Park,
Okay.
make myself available. Our Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. I'm seeking your approval for the professional leave request, the revised copy you received this evening.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malco. And I will second that. Any discussion?
I would just ask, would you give us a report on the BPA, how they do after their experience? And I know that FCCLA is somewhere right now, and I guess the Science Olympiad, if you could give us an update on that also. But there was one more. I did not know that we had a coding club at the high school. And I believe that they went to competition, and I'm just curious, Mrs. Castaneda, how they did, and if you could keep us updated about that, that'd be great.
Will do.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. For my second item, I am seeking your approval for the field trip requests, the revised copy you received this evening.
Move to approve the field trip requests.
Motion by Dr. Medlin,
I'll second that.
second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And for my final item, I am bringing you the middle school science textbook selections. We've been meeting throughout the course of this year to look at the new science textbooks that are available. It's quite a big deal this year because Indiana recently adopted the new NGSS standards, the Next Generation Science Standards. So that was done the previous year, which means all of our materials now are going to align to that. The NGSS standards are actually used by many states throughout the country, and so resources have already readily been available for them. In the end, fifth grade decided to go with the science tech book from Discovery. They, about 6 years ago, when we had science textbook adoption last, had decided to wait a year instead of adopting that year because they were still working through their new math curriculum at that time, and our fifth grade teachers teach both subjects. And so even though they went through the caravan process and made their decision this year, we won't actually implement it until the 24-25 school year, which was noted in your packet. And then for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers, they chose Indiana Inspire Science by McGraw-Hill. With both publishers, the groups felt that they met the new NGSS standards. They felt there was a good balance of print and digital. There have been a lot of improvements because of the pandemic with virtual field trips, simulations, which could be helpful if a teacher is out for a day and needs to leave subplans. Also could be helpful if a student is absent and they need to have them go back and watch a video of the lab that they did, instead of the teacher having to set that up for just one single student who may have missed it. They felt there was a lot of current events and real life scenarios that would make it engaging for students. Lots of differentiated resources and full integration with Canvas, which is something that's important to our teachers since we use that so much. Any questions?
Yeah, the next generation standards now, is that what? Thank you. I'm not good at turning the microphone on. The next generation standards, can you tell me, are all the states in the, or is this unique to Indiana, or is it unique to just a few of us, or?
There's about 20 other states that utilize them. What they do is they try to focus on a real-life phenomena and have students explore that with hands-on activities throughout the course of that module or unit. They look at more cross-cutting concepts because there's so much that ties in between math with science, but also with reading. And so they want to try to build on those skills. And then they're, of course, focused on some of the same content that we've always had before. And so those are kind of some of the bigger shifts with the NGSS
Right.
standards.
So it sounds like it might be a little bit of curriculum mapping and putting it all together, which is exactly what our brain likes.
Yes, so we'll
It
be
likes
definitely
to-
doing a major overhaul of our curriculum with this
Yeah.
process as
So
well.
are you still, and I noticed that we haven't had too many presenters on the brain research, but are you still using the data that you learned from the lady, I think she was from Butler?
Dr. Desautel's?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's still incorporated at the secondary level with our advisory content as well as the PT content at the high school level.
Okay.
It probably is about time to maybe look into bringing her back for some of our newer teachers. It's been a couple of years since we did that whole staff training, so that's something we can look into.
And there's so much research that has surfaced since she's been here, I imagine, so it would be nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you. Our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Grimala.
My only item tonight is to seek approval for the professional leave requests that were included in your board packet.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Marshall.
I'll second that.
Second by Dr. Malco. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And right along to our Director of Business Services, Mr. James.
Good evening. My first item is to seek your approval for the donations that were listed in your board packet.
Motion to approve those donations?
And I will second that. Any discussion, questions?
That's an amazing amount of donation to the
And that
Heart
was just
Association.
Coaling and, you were talking about
Yeah,
the
the
Heart Association,
Heart
right?
Association,
Yeah,
amazing.
Coaling and Bibbage.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
That Kids Heart Challenge used to be called Jump Rope for Heart.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
But yes, yep.
A different venue. We don't all go in the gym with the jump ropes anymore and knock each other out.
Hope not.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And my second item is just to give the board an update on our spring ADM count that was taken at the beginning of February. In your board packet, I included how our counts changed from the initial fall count in September through the count here in February. In the fall, our overall ADM count was 9,094. And here in February, it is down to 9,055. So a decrease of 44 students, but I would like to make note that we had 56 December graduates at the high school, so we are actually up 12 kids. As you know, currently we do not receive, we lose funding for those graduates because they're not in the February count. There is, again, legislation this year in one of the bills, I think it's in the budget bill because it has to do with the funding, to count the February grads, or excuse me, the December grads and not punish school districts, but it's been there before and unfortunately it hasn't made it out. So we'll see what happens over here in the next 2 months and hopefully we'll stay in there this time. So, If any questions, that's all I have.
I do have a couple of questions, but I'll just call you about those rather than take the time now, okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
All right, thank you. And that moves us right into our public comments. We do have one person, and that would be Miss Jillian Schrems.
I feel like it's so small. This room is tiny. Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Okay, Jillian Trans, 1004 Richmond Court, Dyer, Indiana. I wanted to speak with you tonight about HB 1608, which is one of the bills in this legislative session that came out of the Education Committee. While I'm in opposition to a great number of the bills in this legislative session, HB 1608 is legislation that will impact the parents, students, and teachers at our Lake Central School Corporation if and when it passes, so it's relevant to this body and how you will enforce it if and when that time comes. If you're not familiar with HB 1608, that's okay. It started out as a version of Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, prohibiting certain discussions with K-3 students in public schools. But tonight, I'd like to focus on the current amended version of the bill, which passed out of the House last week and which is included in the current version. So if this bill passes, it's going to do a couple of things. First, it's going to require our trans and non-binary students to submit written documentation of any changes of their pronouns or name if it differs from the name of their gender assigned at birth at the beginning of the school year, which means that the state is requiring our trans students to be put on a list as a mandate. It also will require that any trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming students who don't submit to this list have to be misgendered by their teachers for the duration of the school year, which we know will cause significant harm. Even though misgendering has negative and mental health and academic outcomes, this is the direction they've chosen to go with HB 1608. So that's the first part. The second part is that HB 1608 will require teachers to report any students who request a name or pronoun change to their parents, essentially outing these kids with no regard for their safety or their mental health. Instead of providing compassion, the teachers will have to out their kids, causing them harm and potentially endangering them. I've spoken to each of my state legislators who represent my district, and both have supported or will support HB 1608. Senator Durnell and Representative Slager have both admitted that they have no subject matter expertise in this area and are essentially voting along party lines instead of, protecting the health and safety of our trans students in the district they represent. I myself hold a degree in gender studies, but even that, combined with numerous nationwide studies opposing this type of legislation, as well as the opposition from accredited groups like the AMA and the American Academy of Pediatrics, that's not enough to convince them, and this legislation is harmful and unnecessary. Each of them admitted that they don't have a trans kid in their life that they know and love, but they're still okay passing this hate into law, harming the families that they serve. I attended a legislative session update with the ACLU of Indiana this evening, and HB 1608 will most likely be heard in the Senate in the coming weeks. I hope that Lake Central is prepared for the administrative burden of operationalizing this law and the impact it will have on our trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming students here at LC. This legislation certainly doesn't represent the majority of families that I've met in this district, who I find to be compassionate, supportive people who are just looking to do what's best for our kids. And all of our kids deserve safe, supported spaces to learn without having to be documented and put on a list mandated by a state that refuses to protect them. So I would encourage you, if you have any sway, call the folks that represent this district and educate them on what this would play out to look like and the burden it would have on LC.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move into our board comments and consideration of future agenda items. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you. Last evening, I watched a television program, 60 Minutes. They had a segment on there talking about AI, artificial intelligence. Did anyone happen to see it?
No.
All right. They were talking about some of the companies involved and what they're projecting and what they plan on doing for the future. In a proactive statement tonight, I would like Lake Central to be aware that it's just not something we have to accept necessarily, because from what they were saying, this one company, for example, in the field of science, come out with a statement or fact, as they call it, that's incorrect. I'll mention the fact, they mentioned that the Antarctic ice is comprised of 3% of, I'm trying to think of the animals. Penguin urine. And, you know, that astounded me until they come back and found out in fact checking, penguins do not urinate. I don't know how they get rid of their excess things, but we're gonna be faced with that down the road. AI is something in the future, it's coming, whether it's in the field of science or social studies or whatever. I'd like us to be prepared for that, for the benefit of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kelly?
No comments this evening.
Dr. Medlin?
I just like to address what Mrs. Schrantz has brought up, that I appreciate you coming to the meeting to speak to us, and I for one, will do what I can to contact legislators in that fashion as well. That is all.
Thank you. Dr. Malko?
Well, hearing the just tidbits of conversation tonight, it makes me very sad where we're going in this world and where we possibly could be going. You know, Larry, your comment earlier about students and their behavior, and it just reminds me of the days when you just have to regroup and say, we are going to keep control. You know, there's all this stuff that's out there, this TikTok about this girl being attacked, that teacher being attacked by the student because she took one of his computer devices, and you know, there's just all this stuff that's being fed to our students, and it's so sad. It just really makes me sad. And then the comment that you make about labeling our students, and where is that going to go? And some of us have had some conversation. This may not be politically correct, but quite honestly, I don't care, because I don't care right now. But what's interesting is that all of our representatives, all their children went to private schools. None of them went to public school, but yet there they sit and they make decisions based on rules and regulations for public school. And I know Nicole and I have talked about this quite a bit, and it's probably time that we as a board get together and get a unified approach to this. I know we mentioned it before, and I just don't like what's coming out of the either the state level or the federal level. So Nicole, if we would maybe get together sometime this week, and maybe Jennifer, I know has an interest in that also, and we'll put together some ideas, and can we do that legally, 3 of us?
No.
Well, we'll meet separately. Yeah, we'll just meet separately. But,
Two at a time.
okay.
We can post it if you want to meet.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Just got to give 48 hours notice.
okay. All right, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Sharns, for coming out and talking. I have to ask you, was that one of your children in the play the other night, High School Musical? Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, which brings me to that. I went to the High School Musical, see it behind you, and it was fabulous. So if you missed it, I'm sorry, but great job to all that were involved. And, you know, I don't know what Dr. Veraco's, he said he went on his word with somebody about the asynchronous, or the synchronous e-learning, but, you know, it turned out okay for my child. We had no hiccups. Thank you for all the messages that went out from the high school. I only have high school, everybody. High school and from Ms. Castaneda, so I thought it went really well.
Yeah, I think it did too, just from observing my older son do the work and have him the night before say to me, "What do you mean it's not asynchronous?" He's like, they're going to make us do all the work then. This isn't as good of a day. So, we still rather be in person.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so I'll state that. But yeah, I think we've come miles from a couple years ago. And so, I could say that what I observed was, certainly better than when a sub is in a classroom, because my son's teachers rather, were engaging with him. And it was good to hear. So thank you. Thank you for noticing, Mrs. Seuss.
I was not sitting in with my daughter, but I could hear as I was doing things around the house, and I was like, wow, this is like she's in class, so.
Yeah, my son talks loud, so hard not to hear him.
And we'll turn that now over to Dr. Varacco for board calendar of future activities.
Yeah, so we're going to be back here in 2 weeks on March the 20th. So we are heading into that time of season where we start recognizing some outstanding student achievement, some outstanding athletic achievements. So look forward to that. Those tend to be bright spots at these meetings. So we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for adjournment? Motion to adjourn. We have a motion by Mrs. Kelly, and a second. We're adjourned.